He'd charged straight ahead, only to make a sharp turn when he'd encountered a vehicle or the fence. The fence surrounding the lot was 10 feet high, topped with barbed wire. Oh my God, he was trapped. She'd have to let him out without getting trampled to death or skewered by his antlers. Andi slowly walked toward the gate, not wanting to startle the beast. The deer was freaking out, looking for a way out. Just as she reached the keypad, the buck charged at her. No, 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 no! She punched in the code with shaky fingers. No! Before the gate could open, the buck leaped in the air, easily clearing the fence, and ran into the wooded area behind the lot. Andi puffed out her cheeks and exhaled. It took a few minutes for her heart rate to return to normal. She locked up the lot and headed into the office. Andi opened the door, and her boss, per usual, was sitting at his desk, pretending to be completely engrossed in paper reports. "Didn't you hear me scream?" she asked. "Sure," he replied without looking up from his paperwork. "Since you didn't continue screaming, I figured you were fine." Andi's mouth dropped open. Really, she shouldn't be surprised. Her boss was a few years older and acted more like an annoying older brother. His grandmother lived on her street, so they practically grew up together. "Gee, thanks," she said as she dropped the keys in the completed bin and grabbed 2 folders from the outstanding repos bin. She called for an Uber service to take her back to her car at the 7-Eleven. "The Chevy is in the lot." Andi plopped down in a seat in front of Jerry's desk. He continued to ignore her, so she stretched her long legs out and propped her feet on his desk. He lifted his head, stared at her boots, and raised a brow. "I've got good news and bad news," Jerry sighed. "Give me the bad news." "Well, the skip hit a deer head-on while I was following him, and then he put the carcass in the bed of the truck before stopping at the 7-Eleven. Jerry rubbed the tension that was beginning to form at the base of his neck before looking back at Andi. "Oh, that's just terrific. How many times do I have to tell you that we only take the vehicle? All personal items must remain with the skip. You know I hate dealing with people." He leaned back in his chair and studied her. "And the good news is..." Andi removed her feet from Jerry's desk, leaned forward, and said, "Although the front bumper is a little dented on the driver's side, the truck is still drivable, and I took care of the deer for you." Andi smiled, looking quite pleased with herself. Jerry narrowed his eyes. "How exactly did you take care of the deer?" The Uber car pulled in front of the door. Andi stood up, walked to the glass door, and opened it. "The skip didn't kill the buck, but rather stunned it. It woke up when I pulled into the lot, hopped out of the truck bed, and eventually jumped the fence." Andi bit her bottom lip and then said, "One more tiny bit of bad news. The buck was a little disoriented when he jumped out of the Chevy, and he ran into the side of your Mustang." She grinned as she quickly stepped through the door to greet the driver, but not before she heard a string of obscenities blast from inside the office. "Thanks," Andi said as she tipped the Uber driver and got out of his car. She clicked the key fob to unlock her 1998 Jeep Wrangler, got in, and started the engine. So reliable, she thought. She'd purchased the gently used vehicle last summer after her reliable Honda had blown up. Andi loved driving with the top down most of the summer and in the unusually warm fall. It was just recently that the weather had turned colder and she began to notice her heater seemed a little flaky. It was really cold today, so Andi turned the heater knob on the max setting. She placed her fingers up to the vent. Icy cold air blasted through the vents. Maybe it will work once the engine heats up a bit. She quickly turned it back down to low. Brrr. A can't catch me latte would be just the thing to warm me from the inside out. The gingerbread, white chocolate, and brown sugar beverage should do the trick. She drove over to Mill Mountain Coffee and Tea and ordered one. Heavenly. When she finally pulled into the driveway, cold air continued to blow out of her vents. She stepped out of her car and saw her 3 pseudo-grandmothers, Mrs. Barzetti, Mrs. Davis, and Mrs. Harper. They'd always looked out for her, but especially since her maternal grandparents had been killed in a car accident. "Oh, Lord," Andi said to herself as she watched Mrs. Barzetti stand at the top step of a ladder, reaching out to her right, trying to hang Christmas lights. Mrs. Davis was holding the base of the ladder, and Mrs. Harper, Jerry's grandma, was giving directions. This was a disaster waiting to happen. Andi ran across the street. "Mrs. Barzetti, what are you..."